Malaysia seized a yacht almost as long as a football pitch. Then the government sold it for $126 million. That was roughly half what it cost to build. Malaysia kept the cash. It was owed far more. The man that Yacht was traced to has never stood trial. Not in Malaysia, not in America. 10 years and counting. I am Archie. I keep the files nobody wants reopened. This one is stamped file number 7, 1MDB. Inside, a fund a country built out of borrowed money, a prime minister now in a cell, a bank that paid billions, and one man nobody can find. Open it with me. It starts with a signature in July 2009. Najib Razak had just become Prime Minister of Malaysia. Within weeks, his government took a small state investment fund and rebuilt it as a national one. They called it One Malaysia Development Berhad, 1MDB. The plan sounded reassuringly dull. Power stations, a new financial district in Kuala Lumpur. Then comes the part almost nobody explains. A sovereign wealth fund is supposed to be a country's savings account. Usually it fills with surplus money, oil profits mostly, and invests that for the next generation. Malaysia did something different. It built its fund on debt. 1MDB did not wait to save. It borrowed billions by selling bonds on the government's credit, betting the investments would pay it back later. That one choice created the opening. A savings account only grows if somebody deposits real money in it. A debt-funded fund is paperwork and promises. Send the loan through the right shell companies, get the right people to sign, and billions can leave before a single power station exists. Malaysia did not lose money it had. It lost money it had promised to pay back. To borrow that much, you need a bank. In 2012 and 2013, Goldman Sachs arranged 3 bond deals for 1MDB and raised about $6.5 billion. The bank took roughly $600 million in fees. Fees on government-grade bonds usually run 1 or 2%, sometimes far less. 600 million was closer to 10. Nobody asked out loud why the paperwork paid so well. They called the extra a risk premium. Years later, American prosecutors gave the same money a different name: bribes. Meanwhile, according to the complaint American prosecutors filed years later, money raised for the fund traveled somewhere else entirely. Nightclubs, auction rooms, a film studio, and parties in Las Vegas that reportedly drew pop stars and film stars, hosted by a young Malaysian financier named Jho Low. Not an official, not a banker. He held no post at the fund at all. By 2015, $681 million had landed in one private bank account. It belonged to the Prime Minister. The leak did not come from a conscience. It came from a hard drive. In 2011, a Swiss executive named Xavier Justo left PetroSaudi, a company that had partnered with 1MDB. On his way out, he copied the servers. Insurance, he later called it. 227,000 emails, 90 gigabytes. 4 years later, that archive reached journalists. Justo's own story then turns uncomfortable. In 2015, a Thai court convicted him of blackmail, not for exposing 1MDB, but for demanding money from PetroSaudi in exchange for the files. A confession cut his sentence to 3 years. The biggest investigation of its kind in American history began with a bargaining chip. In 2015, 2 outlets started publishing: Sarawak Report, edited by Claire Rewcastle Brown, and the Wall Street Journal. That July, they printed the number, $681 million, sitting in the Prime Minister's personal accounts. Malaysia went after the reporter. Authorities issued an arrest warrant for Rewcastle Brown and asked Interpol for a red notice, an international wanted alert. Interpol refused. In 2018, a new government dropped the case. Then came the official explanation. In January 2016, Malaysia's Attorney General announced that the $681 million was a personal donation from the Saudi royal family. Not graft, not bribery. No criminal offense. That April, Saudi Arabia's foreign minister called it genuine. A gift. $681 million of it. Nobody in this file ever explains what it was for. 6 months later, on the 20th of July 2016, the United States Justice Department filed the biggest kleptocracy case in its history. The legal word for a country looted by the people running it. The complaint said more than $4.5 billion left 1MDB between 2009 and 2015. A Attorney General Loretta Lynch said corrupt officials had treated this public trust as a personal bank account. The filings read like an auction catalogue, a 91-meter super yacht, paintings by Van Gogh and Monet later seized in Switzerland, and a $100 million Hollywood film about a stockbroker who steals. Two people who did nothing wrong gave things back. Miranda Kerr handed the Justice Department jewelry worth around $8 million. Leonardo DiCaprio returned artwork and an Oscar statuette. Neither faced any charge. The department said both cooperated fully. The gifts came back years before the money did. And then, in May 2018, Malaysians voted. The governing coalition lost. The new government reopened everything, and in July 2018, prosecutors charged Najib Razak. Most retellings get the next part wrong. There are two separate cases. Keep them apart. The first is SRC International. 42 million ringgit, about $10 million, moved into his accounts. In July 2020, the High Court convicted him and gave him 12 years. He appealed to the top. In August 2022, Malaysia's highest court refused him, and he went to prison that day. That one is final. Then, in February 2024, the Pardons Board cut that sentence in half, 12 years to 6. The fine dropped from 210 million ringgit to 50. A court took 4 years to reach a number. A committee halved it without saying why. In 2019, Malaysia sold and seized a super yacht for $126 million, roughly half its reported price. That October, lawyers for Jho Low agreed to hand the Justice Department about $700 million in assets. He admitted no wrongdoing. Goldman Sachs is 4 different stories. The parent company signed a deferred prosecution agreement in October 2020 and paid more than $2.9 billion without pleading guilty. Its Malaysian subsidiary did plead guilty. The group separately agreed to pay Malaysia $3.9 billion. One banker, Tim Leisner, pleaded guilty and got 2 years in 2025. Another, Roger Ang, went to trial. A jury convicted him, and a judge gave him 10 years. A plea and a verdict are not the same thing. And Jho Low, exactly one court has convicted him, and it was not America's or Malaysia's. In March 2023, a court in Kuwait convicted him of money laundering in Absentia, 10 years and an order to return $1 billion. He was not in the room. He mounted no defense. Then, the day after Christmas 2025, the main case landed. On the 26th of December, the High Court found Najib Razak guilty at first instance on all 25 counts in the 1MDB Tenor case. 15 years and a fine of 11.38 billion ringgit, about $2.7 billion. The judge rejected the Saudi donation defense and found the donation letters forged. The written judgment says $681 million is not chicken feed, and that the accused was no country bumpkin. 4 days later, Najib filed an appeal. No court has decided it. One name in this file sits in a cell appealing. The other has still not walked into a courtroom. By 2026, Malaysia had recovered 31.3 billion ringgit, about 74%, according to its anti-corruption chief. Watch that fraction. The bottom number is Malaysia's own tally of 42 billion ringgit, about $10 billion, which counts debt and interest the country still had to service. The American figure, $4.5 billion, measures something narrower. What prosecutors say people took. Different rulers. And much of what came back came from Goldman Sachs, not from anyone's vault. The stepson's case ended a third way. Riza Aziz, a producer on that Hollywood film, faced 5 money laundering charges and in May 2020 received a discharge not amounting to an acquittal. That is not innocence. Prosecutors can, in theory, bring the charges back. The money reached an American election too. In November 2025, a court sentenced the former Fugees rapper Pleas Michel to 14 years. The charge, routing money from Jho Low into the 2012 Obama campaign and lobbying to shut the 1MDB investigation down. He is appealing from a prison cell, which leaves the man at the center. According to the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg, his legal name appeared on the US Justice Department's pardon list, filed under pardon after completion of sentence. He has not completed an American sentence. He has not started one. As of July 2026, the White House says these individuals are not on the radar of the pardon team. Malaysia's Prime Minister answered that his country will not be influenced, disturbed, or affected by any US decision. Here is the lesson from file number 7. Borrowed money moves at the speed of a signature. Oversight moves at the speed of a committee. 2 names sit on this fund. One is in a cell, appealing. The other filed paperwork from an address nobody can confirm. Close the file. Somewhere tonight, a country is signing for a loan it will never see. I'll keep the light on.